Hello dear students. Now we are to learn our next chapter from biology section. Chapter 7, page number 114, and the name of the chapter is Control and Coordination. In previous chapter, that is life processes, we have learned about different processes like nutrition, transportation, respiration, and excretion involved in maintaining the life of living organisms. There, we learned that anything moving or making certain movements are alive. Plants showing movements are because of their growth. For example, when a seed germinates and grows, we can see that seedling comes out of the ground, just moving the soil aside. But if the growth were to be stopped, these movements would not occur. Some moments like a cat running, children playing, cow chewing its cud are the movements but not growth. Their movement clearly does not indicate their growth. Then why are these movements associated with life? The answer may be possibly the cat may be running because it has seen a mouse or is being chased by a dog. Children are playing in the park, moving here and there for enjoyment or refreshment. And cow chew its cud just to break the complex substances, that is cellulose, into simpler form and make it easier to digest. Now, what will you do if a bright light is focused directly into your eyes? Or what will you do if you suddenly touch a hot object? I hope you know the answer, right? Yes. Since we detect the change in our environment, we respond to it with certain movements according to the situation to protect ourselves. That is, we close our eyes or remove our hands immediately. As to conclude, it is the fact that all the movements in response to the environment is carefully controlled. Every stimuli gets a proper response to it. Like in a classroom, we whisper to our friends instead of shouting. Why? Because we know that we cannot shout to our friends in the classroom. This makes us clear that movements made by us depend upon the situation occurring right there. Therefore, there must be some specialized tissues or systems which help us to recognize the current situation and make movements to respond accordingly. Now, what are those systems? Do you have any idea? Yes, there are two important systems which are responsible for control and coordination in animals. And they are number 1, nervous system, which consists of brain, spinal cord, and large number of nerves. Number 2, endocrine system, also called hormonal system, which consists of different glands which secrete different hormones. So, nervous system and endocrine system help in control and coordination in animals. Now, let us learn about nervous system in animals. But before that, we must be aware that there are receptors present in our sense organs. I hope you all know about the sense organs, which will collect the information from the surroundings. Now, what are the receptors? Receptors are specialized tip of nerve fiber that collect the information to be conducted by the nerves. And now, here are the different types of receptors and where are they found. Firstly, ear. It is also known as phonoreceptor since it helps in hearing and balancing of the body. Now, photoreceptors, they are found in eyes, which helps in visual stimulation, that is, to see everything around us. Next, thermoreceptors are found in skin. They help us to detect pain, touch, and heat stimuli. Now, olfactory receptors, they are in nose, which helps us to detect the smell. And lastly, gustatory receptors, they are found in tongue, which helps to detect taste. Now, don't forget that there are 5 types of receptors present in our body, and they are phonoreceptors, photoreceptors, thermoreceptors, olfactory receptors, and gustatory receptors. And they are present in these organs. They are ear, eyes, skin, nose, and tongue, respectively. Next, now, nervous system. It is a system which comprises of nervous tissues, large number of nervous tissues. There are millions and millions of nervous tissues present in our body. The main function of nervous tissues is control and coordination. These nervous tissues receive information from the surrounding environment. Secondly, they receive information from the various body parts. And lastly, these nervous tissues act accordingly through muscles and glands. And the smallest functional and structural unit of nervous tissue is called neuron, or we can call it nerve cell. And that neuron is responsible for transmission of nerve impulses, that is messages. This you have learnt in class 9. Now, let's learn about the structure of neuron in detail. Here is the diagram of a neuron, which is the smallest structural and functional unit of nervous tissue. Now, let's start it with the dendrites. It is the hair-like structure that is present on the margin of the cell body of neuron. These are the hair-like structures. It is the point where information is acquired. Don't forget, these dendrites present in the neuron acquire the information. That is, firstly collect the information. Then here it is a somewhat star-shaped structure that is called the cell body or cyton. And this thread-like structure, it is the tail of the neuron, which is called axon. This axon is covered by a protective insulator that is called myelin sheath. And coming to the last part, this is the ending of the axon. This is the part where axon comes and ends. This is called nerve ending or axon terminal. Now, types of neuron. There are 3 types of neuron: sensory neuron, motor neuron, and association or relay neuron. Now let's look at their function. What is the function of sensory neuron? This sensory neuron receives signal from different sense organs. Don't forget this. Number 2, motor neuron. Now it sends signals to muscles or glands to act. And number 3, it is association or relay neuron. These neurons relay the signals between sensory neuron and motor neuron. That means relay means transmit the information, the signals between the sensory neuron and motor neuron. Now, don't forget the types of neuron. There are 3 types of neuron with 3 particular functions. There is another important term, synapse. Now, what is it? What is synapse? Now, synapse, it is the point of contact between the terminal branches of axon, that means axon terminal, nerve ending of one neuron with the dendrite of another neuron. Okay, now synapse is a gap, that is gap between 2 neurons. This is synapse. It is also called neuronal junction. Now, what is the function of synapse? The function of synapse is to transfer electric nerve impulse from one nerve cell to another. This is the nerve ending, this one, nerve ending, this one. And we are talking about, we can find synapse here between 2 neurons. That is, this one is the axon terminal or nerve ending, and this one is the dendrite. Here you can see this one is the axon terminal, axon ending, nerve ending, and here you can find the tip of dendrite like this. This is the axon terminal and this is the tip of dendrite. This one is the axon terminal and this is the tip of dendrite. Here you can find synapse. It is the gap between 2 neurons. Now its function is to transfer information from one neuron to another neuron, one neuron to another neuron. See here, one neuron to another neuron. This is the synapse. And here, when the electric impulse come to the nerve ending, at that time it cannot transfer from this one nerve cell to another in the form of impulse. Hence, there it produce chemical neurotransmitter, and with the help of neurotransmitter the electric impulse is transferred from one nerve cell to another nerve cell. I hope you all have understood this. Next term, it is neuromuscular junction, NMJ. Now what is it? It is a point where a muscle fiber comes in contact with the motor neuron carrying nerve impulse from the nervous system. Okay, this is showing the neuromuscular junction. This one is the axon and this one is its ending, axon ending, and this axon ending or the neuron is attached to this muscle fiber. So the point of contact between this axon terminal and muscle fiber is known as neuromuscular junction. They are also transferring information from nerve cells to the muscle cells for the action. Now, another important thing, that is transmission of nerve impulse. How the information is transferred from one neuron to another neuron. It is like this. Firstly, you can draw the neuron in this way easily. This one is the nerve ending. nucleus, dendrites, and this axon covered with the help of myelin sheath. There should be gap. Okay, this is the structure of neuron. Now we will see here how the nerve impulse, message or the information is transferred from one neuron to the another one. Now the first information is acquired in dendrites, that is here. Now if you touch a hot object, when you touch a hot object, it is sensed by our sense organ, and now these sensed by especially our receptors that is present in our sense organs, such as for this example, when you touch a hot object, our skin thermoreceptor will sense it since it is present in our skin, and that information is passed to the dendrites. Firstly, that information of touching the hot object is acquired by dendrites. As soon as it gets the information, it creates an electric impulse, that is, it is the message that you have touched a hot object. It creates an electrical impulse, and now that impulse travels through the, this one is dendrite. Information is acquired here. As soon as the information is acquired by the dendrites, it is changed into nerve impulse, electrical impulse, and it travels through the cell body, axon, and till here, from dendrite, axon, and up to here till nerve ending. These are the nerve endings. Now, while you touch a hot object, the first information is acquired in dendrites. Then it is transferred, that impulse is transferred through cell body to axon and then to the nerve ending. This is the pathway of nerve impulse. And now what happens here when it reaches the nerve ending? You have already learned about synapse. Now that information is to be sent to the muscle fiber. Here you can find the now neuromuscular junction. Now from here, this is the muscles. Now information reaches here. As soon as information reaches to the nerve ending, it is transferred to the muscle fiber through NMJ. Here information is transferred to the muscles, and as soon as it reaches the muscles, we remove our hands. Now this is a simple general flow diagram which show the transmission of nerve impulse in our body, and we have taken the example of touching the hot object. I am repeating it again. Now when you touch a hot object, it is sensed by thermoreceptor present in our skin, and as soon as we touch that object, that information is acquired by the dendrites in our neuron, because there are certain things present in our hand that detects nerve endings are present in our hands. As soon as we touch it, the information is acquired in dendrites, and since it changes that information into electrical impulse, that impulse is transferred from cell body to axon and then to the nerve ending. And as soon as it reaches nerve ending, that information is transferred to the muscle fiber, and as soon as that information, that impulse, that message reaches the muscle fibers, we remove our hand. This is the working of a neuron. Next topic, it is reflex action. Now What is reflex action? Reflex action is a special case of involuntary movement in voluntary organs. I think you know about the term involuntary and voluntary. Involuntary means without our wish, voluntary means with our wish. When a voluntary organ senses the danger, it is immediately pulled away from the danger to save itself. It is a very fast action, very quick response to the environment. And for example, again, you know that when you touch a hot object, what will you do? You remove your hand immediately without a millisecond. All of this happens just in a flash, quickly. This is the example of a reflex action. And another example, it is like this. When you are walking in a road and suddenly a vehicle appears, what will you do? You reflexly move out of the road. And another example is when you are hungry and you smell a very, very delicious food, what will you do? Involuntarily, you will start salivating. That is, your mouth will be filled with saliva. It will be in case of sour fruit like mango, tamarind and all. What happens in reflex actions? When we touch a hot object, we remove our hand immediately without thinking for a second. Why we do that? Because we think it consciously about the pain of being hurt and are afraid of that. So we remove our hand in a flash, that is in a second. Now the question comes, how can I think that things that if I don't remove my hand, I will be hurt? So I remove my hands immediately or reflexly. Do you wonder, when did I get the time to think about this? In this case, just remember that thinking is a very complex activity. Our thinking tissues present in our body consist of dense network of intricately arranged neurons. And these thinking neurons are seated in our brain. That means they are present in our brain. And if to remove our hand while touching a hot object was to be commanded by our brain, it would take a very long time. Till then, we would be burnt by touching the hot object. Now, how is the problem solved? Now, here comes the solution, that is reflex arc. What is reflex arc? The path through which nerve signals involved in reflex action is called the reflex arc. Let me read it again for you. The path through which nerve signals involved in reflex action travel is called the reflex arc. You know, nerves from all over our body, where do they meet? Yes, they meet in the spinal cord. I hope you all know where is our spinal cord. Hence, these reflex arcs are formed over there. Where? Over the spinal cord. Don't forget, reflex arcs are formed in the spinal cord. The information, that is touching a hot object, it can also be called as input action, is transferred to the nerves present in the spinal cord instead of brain. Don't forget, while we send message to the brain, it will take a long time and we can be burnt. And these nerves immediately send signal to the muscles of our hand to remove. This is the output action. Hence, the action reaction is completed quickly. comparing to the messages sent to the brain and act. Now let's look at the flow of signal in reflex arc. You can see it in figure 7.2 diagram of reflex arc present in your book. Firstly, here is the receptor, that is thermoreceptor present in the skin. We know that these thermoreceptors present in the skin helps us to feel the pain and all. So while we toss the hot object, these receptors will sense the heat, and this signal is picked by the sensory neuron present here and is forwarded or relayed to the spinal cord. I am repeating it again. Firstly, the sense organ that is present in our thermoreceptors present in our skin senses the heat, and it is quickly picked by the sensory neuron, and the sensory neuron picks the signal from these receptors and send it to the relay neuron. Now relay neuron is here, it is present in the spinal cord. Now as soon as that signal reaches the spinal cord, this spinal cord will relay messages to the effector via motor neuron. Now the signal of removing the hand will be commanded by this relay neuron, and it will bring into action by the motor neuron, and it will come here. That motor neuron will bring the information to remove hand and pass it to the effector. This is called muscles in our arm. Now as soon as that information reaches here, we will remove our hand immediately. Now here it forms a reflex arc, and instead of going to the brain and all, the information just reached the relay neuron present in the spinal cord, and relay neuron it will send signal to the effector via the motor neuron, and we react to these action immediately. Here it is the flow diagram for the signal in the reflex arc. Firstly, it is the receptor, sense organ, that senses the outer air environment, and that information is picked by the sensory neuron and is sent to the relay neuron. Relay neuron, it is present in the spinal cord, and it sends signal to the effector via motor neuron. The signal sent by the relay neuron will be carried by the motor neuron to the effector, that is muscles, which comes into action. And the things not to forget is these two. The signals do not travel up to the brain, because it would take more time for signals to reach the brain, hence it reaches to the spinal cord. But every action is controlled by the brain ultimately, and only the reflex action is controlled by the spinal cord. Hope you have understood about reflex action and the reflex arc. Next thing we will talk about is about the human nervous system. Our human nervous system consists of three parts, that is central nervous system, CNS, peripheral nervous system, PNS, and autonomous nervous system, ANS. And this, number one, central nervous system or CNS, it consists of brain and the spinal cord. Don't forget, brain and the spinal cord are the central nervous system present in our body. Now, brain, it controls the function in the human body. You all know that. And spinal cord works as the relay channel between the brain and the peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system we'll learn here. Now, peripheral nervous system, it is composed of cranial nerves and spinal nerves. I repeat it, cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Cranial nerves come out of the brain and go to the organs in the head region. They are present in 12 pairs. That means nerves coming out of the brain are called the cranial nerves, and they are present in 12 pairs. Next one is the spinal nerves. Spinal nerves, they come out of the spinal cord and go to the organs below the head region. They are present in 31 pairs. Now, spinal nerves means nerves coming out from the spines and going to the different parts of our body, to the different organs. Now, don't forget this one. And lastly, autonomous nervous system. This nervous system is composed of chain of nerve ganglion which run along the spinal cord. You know that spinal cord is like a big, I think you all have seen rope, no, dory, gai banne dory huncha ni. It will be like that only. And autonomous nervous system is composed of that things. And autonomous nervous system, it controls action in the human body, involuntary action in the human body, that is which we cannot control. And this autonomous nervous system is divided into two parts, sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Let me revise it. Human nervous system, our human nervous system consists of three types of nervous system. Central nervous system, which comprises of brain and spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system, which is composed of cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Autonomous nervous system, which is composed of chain of nerves which run along the spinal cord. And you all know the function of brain and spinal cord. And don't forget, cranial nerves, they are found in 12 pairs. Spinal nerves, they are found in 31 pairs. And this autonomous nervous system is divided into two parts, that is sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Let's learn about sympathetic nervous system. This sympathetic nervous system works to increase breathing rate, the heart rate. That is, for example, while running, our breathing rate also increase and heartbeat also increase. We know that. Why? Because there is a increased demand of supply of oxygen in our body. To fulfill that thing, we breathe very fast, and as a result of that, our heartbeat also increases. Rate of heartbeat also increases. Now, increasing this one, both breathing rate and heart rate is controlled by sympathetic nervous system. Next, it is parasympathetic nervous system. They help in conservation of energy. That means they slows down the activity of organ and has calming effect. And they have calming effect. That means while we sleep, have you noticed that our breathing rate just lowers down, as well as the heart rate also. Now this is controlled by parasympathetic nervous system. Now comes our mastermind, that is human brain. Our human brain, it is a very highly complex organ which is composed of nervous tissues. And our brain is covered by three layered system that is called meninges. Now our brain, it is divided into three main regions, that is forebrain, which is composed of cerebrum. Forebrain, which is composed of cerebrum. Next comes the midbrain, which is composed of hypothalamus, middle part of the brain. And lastly, the hindbrain. Hindbrain is composed of cerebellum, pons, and medulla oblongata. Don't forget this thing. Our brain, which is a highly complex organ made up of nervous tissues, is divided into three parts. Forebrain, which consists of cerebrum, midbrain, which consists of hypothalamus, and hindbrain, which consists of cerebellum, pons, and medulla oblongata. Let's learn about these things in detail, about forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Forebrain, which comprises of cerebrum. Let's talk about cerebrum. It covers the largest part of the brain, and its function is to control voluntary motor action, that is, which can be done by our hand, and it is also the site of sensory perception like auditory perception and tactile and all, and it is also a seat of memory and learning. Whatever you learn and memorize is controlled by this cerebrum, that is forebrain. Voluntary action, which can be done by yourself, motor action that can be done by yourself, is controlled by cerebrum. Don't forget this one. Next one, it is the midbrain, which consists of hypothalamus. You can locate it over here. Hypothalamus is present here. It lies at the base of cerebrum. That means this large part is the cerebrum, and this one is the hypothalamus, which lies at the base of cerebrum. Now, what is its function? This hypothalamus, it controls sleep and wake cycle. It also controls our urge for eating and drinking. Now, how do we know that it is the time to sleep and it is the time to wake up? Or we are feeling hungry and we are stomach full and we are feeling thirsty and all? By the help of hypothalamus, which is present in our midbrain. These things, these cycles are controlled by hypothalamus. Now, about the hindbrain, which consists of medulla, pons, and cerebellum. Now, cerebellum, it is here. You can see it here. Cerebellum, it lies below the cerebrum. Yeah, it is the base of the whole structure of our brain. And now, what are its function? It controls posture and balance. That is, you sitting properly with your back straight in your class, or while you just lay down. These all are controlled by cerebellum. Next, they controls the precision of voluntary action. Whatever action is done precisely, shortly, that is controlled by cerebellum. And next, it is while riding a bicycle, what we are to do is there should be a perfect coordination between pedaling and steering control, and these two things are controlled, balanced by the help of cerebellum. Next one, it is medulla, which is also present in our hindbrain. Medulla, it forms the brain stem. That means from here it spinal cord starts, so this forms the brain stem, medulla, along with the pons. Pons is also present. They to form a proper base, and they continue to the spinal cord. Now, what is the function of medulla? The function of medulla is to control involuntary actions like respiration, heartbeat, blood pressure, salivation, vomiting. These all things which cannot be controlled by us are the involuntary actions, and these are controlled by medulla. And lastly, it is the pons. Pons, their function is to relay impulses between lower cerebellum and spinal cord. It is a relaying part. It relays information from here to here. Spinal cord to lower cerebellum to spinal cord. It is the function of pons. Now, next is the spinal cord. I hope you know the spinal cord. What is the function of spinal cord? the function of spinal cord is to control the reflex action, don't forget this, and conduct messages between the different parts of the body and brain. These are the functions of spinal cord. Now, how are these things protected? How is our brain protected, and how is the spinal cord protected, which is very much important for a living organism? You know, our brain is protected by fluid filled balloon which acts as a shock absorber, which is enclosed inside a bony box called cranium, 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 or we can simply call it skull. And this our spinal cord, it is protected by vertebral column. Don't forget this too. Brain is protected by a bony box called cranium or skull, and spinal cord is enclosed inside a vertebral column. Next subtopic is, how does the nervous tissue cause action? You know, till now what we have learnt only this much, that the information is sensed by the receptors present in the sense organs, and the information is circulated over the whole body, and the message reaches up to the muscles. Now the question comes, how do muscle perform its job? And how do the animals move from one place to another, or they make movements? And also, how does a muscle cell move? And lastly, how do muscle cells change its shape? You all have learnt about muscles in class 9. You know that they are of two types, voluntary muscles and involuntary muscles. I think you all have learned that regardless of cardiac muscles. Now, firstly, the muscle tissues. Firstly, the information is collected by the nervous tissues, that is with the help of sensory neuron, and the information is processed by our central nervous system, which consists of brain and spinal cord. Now, the information is passed to the muscles through motor neuron. As soon as information reaches the muscles, now muscles change their shapes. Now, how do muscles change their shape? Simply by contraction and relaxation. Now, how do the muscle contract? The muscle contract with the help of special protein called actin and myosin, ACTIN, actin and myosin. Whenever the muscle contracts, the muscle cells will become short, and resulting there will be the action performed by us. I hope you got the answer. Since muscle perform its job with the help of special protein and also the information brought by the neurons. How do animals move? The movement is made while muscle changes its shape. Now, how does a muscle cell move? Muscle cell move whenever they contract. The muscle cells whenever they become short. And how do muscle cells change its shape? They change its shape by the help of actin and myosin. They slide over against each other, hence changing the shape of the muscles. Okay, I'm repeating it again for you. Muscle tissues have special filaments called actin and myosin. Next point, when a muscle receives nerve signal, a series of events are triggered in the muscles. At the time, calcium ion enters the muscle cell. Next, it results in actin and myosin filament sliding towards each other, and this is how a muscle contracts. That means while contracting, it changes the shape. And lastly, contraction of muscles bring movement in the related organs. This is how nervous tissues relay information up to the muscle cells and bring it in action.